The Daily Philosopher, now welcoming our host, Sammy Tangier.
Welcome to the Daily Philosopher, a news show that takes the biggest news stories from the week and puts a philosophical spin on them. Today we'll be focusing on the story of Roger C. Stevens. To briefly sum up his story, Roger Stevens was a 21-year-old student at U of T with a philosophy major. He was a member of the Public Speaking Club and spoke about theories of the late philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. His fellow students said he spoke about him in a very uncharacteristic and pessimistic manner. Now, in December 2012, his girlfriend broke up with him, and only weeks later he committed suicide due to a drug overdose. A full version of the story can be found online at the Daily Philosopher site. Now, this issue has created a buzz in the media and left us here at the Daily Philosopher wondering if his suicide had anything to do with Schopenhauer's studies, and did these studies truly lead to his death? Well, we'll find out today in our panel discussion. Now, to introduce today's specialists. First we have Dr. Pallavi Bala, who has a PhD in philosophy and has written a book about the details, facts, misconceptions about pessimism. Our second specialist is Dr. Caitlin Herkenrath, a descendant of the French philosophers Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and she has followed in their footsteps and is also a true believer in existentialism. My co-host Jessie Manning will be acting as mediator today. Let us begin.
Thank you, Sammy. Now, we'll welcome our two guests, Dr. Bala and Dr. Herkenrath. Let's start off with an excerpt from Roger Stevens' suicide note. It reads, "Human life is founded on illusions and lies that I no longer wish to be a part of. We are a part of a meaningless circle of pain and destruction that benefits in no way from my unimportant contributions." Now, when we look at Roger Stevens' news story, it seems as though he was a confident young student and motivational speaker on a national level. I have to say, this is an incredibly ironic thing considering his interest in Schopenhauer's theories of pessimism. It begs the question, what is the meaning of life? Dr. Bala, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, as you know, I am a strong believer in pessimism, like Roger Stevens himself. I believe there is no meaning to life. Considering Roger's situation, he just discovered Schopenhauer's theory, and it would make sense that he would be overwhelmed and would exhibit suicidal thoughts. We as humans progress in science and art, but achieving complete knowledge means nothing once we die. Roger recognized that his contributions would mean nothing, and unfortunately chose to end his life.
That's a little rash though, isn't it? Dr. Herkenrath, what do you think?
As a theistic existentialist, I would disagree. There is so much meaning to our lives. The knowledge we gain and implement now in this era will be looked upon in the future and built off of. Rogers' philosophies and speeches will continue to shape the world long past his death. If there was no meaning in life, it doesn't make sense that Roger would commit suicide based off of the meaning, or lack thereof, that Schopenhauer projected on the concept of being.
Fair enough. Dr. Herkenrath, you mentioned that you were a strict theist. Do you believe that God helps determine the meaning in our lives?
If God were to exist, which I strongly believe, he may or may not influence us to create meaning. In Rogers' case, he likely created his own meaning or non-meaning as a conscious decision. It's not accurate to assume that an outside source is influencing your life's contributions. God exists, but not in relation to how we create our world.
Actually, I don't believe God exists. Why would an outside source pick the human species to give us guidance? Especially when it will amount to nothing once we die or once the universe explodes. Other metaphysical aspects need to be taken into consideration. Whether we will last as long as time to create a difference, whether there's a reason to what we learn and do, and if our universe will eventually be demolished one day.
Dr. Bala, these are actually quite irrelevant. There is no need to commit suicide based off of the idea that the universe may explode. We need to live in the present.
Excuse me? Wait just a second. One person talks at a time, thank you. Now, as an existentialist of Sartrean upbringing, Dr. Herkenrath believes that we are living so as to continue being and thus avoiding death. There may be tensions in life, perhaps similar to those that Stevens experienced with his existential crisis and breakup, but they are to be acknowledged and lived through. Am I correct? If there is no meaning to life, why would Stephen's girlfriend have an influence on him? Is it a coincidence that he committed suicide after the breakup?
It could be a coincidence, but I don't think so. Like, Schopenhauer's theory of pessimism did not support suicide as a possible solution to a cruel and meaningless world. I think he was a wimp, basically.
Well, it's great to hear both your opinions on the matter. Thank you very, very much for both of you for being here today.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
We would love to know your objective facts. So, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and give us your opinion. Now, for our final thought of the day. According to popular culture, many people conclude that suicidal depression makes us think and do some crazy things. Some may even say that suicidal depression can even categorize a person as insane. But according to French philosopher René Descartes, the mind is something both special and unusual, and nothing can come close to the mind's perfection. Thank you for your time and your insights. And as with all Daily Philosopher discussions and philosophy itself, the ideas and theories discussed are that of the philosopher, and each of us is entitled to our own opinions and to consider the questions ourselves and come up with our own philosophies. That concludes today's episode of the Daily Philosopher. Have a great day, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye!